What are you going to do when students come and are thinking of ending their life? We don't want to face that, but we've got somebody special here to talk with us about that today on this episode. The Christian Principles Podcast is brought to you in partnership with the Herzog Foundation. But bear in mind, the views and opinions expressed here are those of the hosts and not necessarily of the Herzog Foundation. Welcome to the Christian Principles Podcast. I'm Matt George.
And I'm Mark Zockoll. This is my virtual background. I do not have this many books. Actually, I have way more books than this.
But that's kind of scarce for you.
Yeah, definitely have way more than that. But we are joined today by Dr. Toby Whitmer. And as we so often do, because we're joined by many doctorates, Toby, Dr. Whitmer, would you mind today foregoing doctor before we refer to you every time, just so that we also don't have to refer to Matt as great, grand, potentate, Lord Master, Supreme Ruler over all? Is it okay with you?
It's not just okay. I would prefer that you do not refer to me as doctor.
Well, very good. Well, then we won't.
Dodged another bullet.
Yeah. Matt's just waiting for that one day when we're going to take the opportunity to refer to him by that. I got to get that on a shirt somewhere. I know we talked about that before, but that'll be an amazing shirt for you to have. All right, but we are talking today with Toby, Toby from Safe Help Groups. Toby, just if you would please give us the 30-second overview of what the Safe Help Groups are. And we'll go back into your story and get more of that, but for someone who's listening and they only got the first 5 minutes with us, what are the Safe Help Groups?
Okay, so it's Safe Helps Groups. Safe is a word that refers to, people who are struggling with suicidal ideation or struggling just with deep depression or anxiety. A place to be safe. Helps is, resources. So basically, it is a group that is committed to the prevention of suicide and to educate the greater church, the greater Christian community about, what goes on the road with a young person or an older person, for that matter, who is struggling with these thoughts and coming to a darkening place where they want to take their life, and then to comfort people like our family, which is SOS, survivors of suicide, those who have lost family members or close friends to suicide. So that's a nutshell.
Okay, so Safe,
one safe,
helps groups.
Many helps.
Group.
Yeah.
So the last two are plural, the first is singular. Very good. And we're going to talk more about your story, and as we heard of it and we're moved by your story earlier, we're going to hear more about that in just a little bit. Before we do that, we're going to hear from our partner, the Herzog Foundation, and what they can do to offer your Christian school professional development, leadership coaching, and lots of other things.
This episode of the Christian Principles Podcast is brought to you by the Herzog Foundation. As Christian educators, we know that liberty without truth is fragile, and truth starts with God. That's why the Herzog Foundation has launched the Faith and Freedom 250 campaign, an initiative that equips schools and families to connect the biblical roots of American freedom to the next generation. Having started on July 4th, 2025, and following through until July 3rd, 2026, Herzog is releasing short videos each Friday, highlighting voices from across the country, educators, leaders, parents, and everyday Americans, reflecting on key moments in our nation's history and the importance of commemorating 250 years of liberty. We all understand how faith has always been central to our country's founding and why it still matters today. It's an incredible way to integrate history, civics, and biblical worldview into your school's curriculum, especially as we approach America's 250th birthday in 2026. Visit herzogfoundation.com to view their free resources and get started today. And make sure to tell them that the fellas here at the Christian Principles Podcast sent you. All right, Toby, we'd love for you to share with our listeners kind of what brought you to this place of creating Safe Helps Group and offering this as part of your ministry.
Yeah, so this was not something that we would ever have intentionally chose for ourselves. My wife and I have been in pastoral ministry for 32 years, 10 as an assistant pastor, and 22 as the lead pastor of Lighthouse Baptist Church in Newark, Delaware. So we have five wonderful, brilliant children. And so through a series of things, some that she could and some that she could not control, our 28-year-old daughter, which was our first child, Abigail, she was married for 3 years, graduate of a prominent Bible university, director in her youth group, professional at a children's hospital. She took her life on June 28th of 2023. And, this was not something that was a shock to us. It was a surprise. We had walked with her through teen depression, anxiety, and that's something else that we talk about in our ministry. That when we come to Christian school or we come to church, this is not something that just happens spontaneously one day without any warning behind it or any signs. But, there were things that either she would not or was unwilling to address, lies. She had been intimately assaulted when she was 17, by a coworker. We didn't find that out for 5 years. But she was very open with us, and we walked with this. We do feel as if truth extended her life perhaps a decade, but there were many things, several things that we use to understand why young people are struggling. So that brought us to I'd been a pastor there, as I said, for 22 years, and a first generation church that the Lord greatly blessed, and I just knew I couldn't go back. Losing a child traumatically, it's called complicated grief, when trauma meets grief. I was too thin to be a lead pastor anymore. So the Lord let this idea spring up in our hearts. Maybe the Lord can use this story like a phoenix coming up from the ashes to be able to help and prevent some other young people in the way our daughter struggled. So we launched as a nonprofit. I had some professional friends that came around me, an attorney, financial people, all of that. The Lord just provided them out of the blue. And we launched that at the end of 2023, and we have been traveling and speaking since.
And we were blessed to hear your story and to hear of these Safe Helps groups through the Maryland Association of Christian Schools pastor and administrator meeting in the spring of 2025. And we were able to connect there. And since then, when I see your name on our list of people to speak to for the podcast, when Matt spoke of what he had coming up in the school year, when we talked about our own experiences, we thought of your story as one which was so moving. Of course, you've given the short version here, but then also your work as so necessary and so meaningful. And we, on the way home from that pastor administrators meeting of the Maryland Association of Christian Schools, we we were we were chiming in with some of the thoughts which you had, I'll say, called out in your time speaking with those school leaders. So before we get into that, tell me what would be your background with Christian education? Why direct this ministry, at least in part, to schools and to Christian schools?
Yeah, well, I grew up in a Christian school, all of my education. But then also, I participated in on a board of a Christian school when I was an assistant pastor. Have a real heart for young people, teens. I was a youth pastor for 10 years. But I see that also as the fertile ground to be able to deal with these things while they are fresh, while they are new, while a young person is forming thoughts. And I really feel like that this is the most effective thing that we do. We have seen fruit. We've seen the Lord deal with young people, young people extremely vulnerable and transparent when they hear our daughter's story and they connect with it. It's so taboo in conservative circles to talk about these things. And so you have people who are struggling with them, not just young people, but adults who really have no place to go. They they kind of feel like, it's all their fault, that they need to be more spiritual, that, when they speak about this, it's really strong words coming back. Oh, don't think like that, or, that's ridiculous. You know, and they need a loving ear to listen, to be able to connect, someone who understands. And so when we talk about young people, I just feel like that is the fertile ground, to be able, when these thoughts begin developing at younger ages. We specifically talk with high school. That depends on what the Christian school wants to do. But whatever, 7th through 12th, or 9th through 12th, or whatever they choose to do, but that's the time to talk.
Yeah. I we talk a lot in education about, as Christian schools especially, about building biblical worldviews for our students. And we want to go down all the different paths, but for whatever reason you brought out the word taboo when we're talking about depression, anxiety, or, ultimately suicide, that why I don't know if we all necessarily have the answer as to why we are so uncomfortable dealing with that. But, what are, you kind of got into it a little bit, but what would you say to our listeners? Why are these discussions so important, especially dealing with even suicide?
Well, it's because there are some very, very long-standing stigmas, concerning anything in mental health, and some that I thank God that some conservative pastors, commentators, even counseling groups are coming to the place where they understand that we probably got it wrong. We probably
Yeah.
got it. There was for a long time almost a denial that that there could be anything organically wrong in the brain that would influence things like depression and anxiety, and even suicidal ideation. And even some of the most conservative groups now are realizing, that all of our organs, we're in fallen bodies, broken bodies, and we have struggles with our liver, or our lungs, or whatever. And to think that the most complex organ of our body doesn't have any problems, and to throw out all of these speculations, and it's always a spiritual problem. And, it's funny because the Puritans didn't even believe that, and
Yeah.
soul care. And I've been reading some Richard Baxter, and, that it was viewed completely differently. But somehow we got into this stigma. There's another reason, and that is because some people think if you talk about something, it'll happen.
Hmm.
It's almost like I don't know, like, you
We'll
can make
take
it.
we'll take a second while you're saying that and walk us through, because one of the things that you had mentioned when you had this discussion with the leaders was, folks, uh, you didn't put it this way, but I'll phrase it this way. It's bogus to think that if we bring it up, they're going to
Act on it.
somehow act on it,
Yeah.
Yeah,
rather than we need not put we don't need to not bring it up because of that fear. We need
yeah.
to that's an improper way of thinking. You claimed it was a statistically proven improper way of thinking. Walk us through that. Take us through those thoughts.
Okay, well, it's similar to back in the day when parents wouldn't talk to their children about any sexual things because they thought that as teenagers, that if they didn't talk about it, that somehow it would never happen, that these
Hmm.
whatever. It's just kind of a crazy thought, but I understand parents. I had 5 children. We have 2 teenagers, a 16 and a 19-year-old, that are still in our home. I understand protecting the children. I understand protecting your children and not wanting to introduce them to things. But that is actually just kind of an ignorance about culture right now also. that this is called the anxious generation. There's a book, The Anxious Generation. My wife, as a Christian school teacher, had to read that over the summer. And these conversations are already happening in a big way among teenagers themselves. And that's not, that's not speculation, and in the Christian community as well. If you've been around young people, if you've had the ear of a youth pastor, or of some young people who have been very open and vulnerable to you, this kind of stuff is very prevalent. It's like, I actually pulled up some statistics for this. It's like 10% recorded. This would be if you're at a hospital and the young person is asked, "Are you safe? Do you feel safe? Whatever, or are you having thoughts?" Just speaking, 10% of young people, report that they've had suicidal thoughts. There's a huge, CDC 20,000 junior high blind kind of survey that a quarter of them, 25% of high school, junior high girls, reported that they were presently considering, not living, not or wanting to take their life. These it exists. And so actually, when we come into a school, we send ahead some information, an article that is done by, I forget which foundation it's done by, but that shows that talking about suicide, talking about extreme anxiety, depression is good. It's actually profitable to allow a destination or some answers to those young people. That there is no scientific proof that speaking about these things encourages. It's exactly the opposite.
When we had an episode multiple episodes talking about sex education, and we brought up the same thing, is that, the thoughts, the information, as far as, the things we don't necessarily want them to be considering or thinking about, it's out there, and they're considering it, and they're thinking about it. So all the more important for us to put truth in front of them.
I would put a plug in that as administrators that can consider, having a group like ours in, that they are going to get questions from parents, but the answer is to be educated about that and have a good answer for parents, instead of being afraid and not having the group in. And we had a school who canceled on the week of us coming, which was very hard on our side, because they got pushback from parents. They should have done the education, weeks in advance. And we welcome parents. We welcome conversations with parents, and even to attend if they want to.
The episodes Matt was referring to, of course, were episodes 111, 112, 113. And as Matt noted, we have a lot of these exact same conversation pieces, as you even heard Toby work through moments ago. One of which was, just because we haven't done it doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. One of which was, our culture is a different culture than we sat in even a couple of decades ago. One of, it's not good enough to say that we don't want to bring it up, because then they'll fixate on it. It's not a good enough reason. But we did also have the conversation of, our schools need to find the focus of what we accuse other schools, other institutions we accuse of straying too far from the ABCs. And they stray too far, and they're putting their stamp and their influence on students in certain ways that they shouldn't be. Well, we say that certain of those institutions claim to be neutral, and so it's a problem that they are saying they're neutral, and then they're espousing these. Well, we don't claim to be neutral. We claim to be Bible-believing Christian schools. Okay, so with that set up, why should our listeners make sure they are having conversations with Safe Helps groups or otherwise about suicide? Why should our schools make sure they're having those conversations?
Because the problem exists in our generation more than any other past generation. Okay,
Wow.
it was exacerbated by COVID. It definitely, numbers shot up, but kind of some numbers. Okay, so 2023, 53,000 people, Americans, took their lives.
Yeah.
That was 700,000 worldwide. But suicide is the second leading cause of death in ages 10 to 14. Second leading cause of death. Third leading in 15-year-olds to 24-year-olds. So this is something that's very prominent. After COVID, the numbers got a little bit better, so 2024, but some of those numbers are still shocking. So in 2024, 2.7% of all American teenagers, 2.7%, almost 3% attempted suicide. Okay. So those that reported, I think I said it already, 10% reported that they strongly considered it. And in talking with teens, when we go into these schools, every time there are young people who come out of the woodwork to talk to us. I mean, every school. One school was really hesitant to have us in, and they didn't think they were going to have us in, and they basically said, no, fine. And then we got a phone call just like 2 weeks later because they had a girl like attempt or threaten to attempt. It's almost like there's a denial.
Yeah.
Some of that is
Yep.
very immature
Hate to say it, but I think that's the word for it. I
that's
think
exactly
denial
right.
is the word for it. Absolutely.
Yeah. But, let me just give you talk about sometimes it's a denial in Christian circles. We're presently, we do triage counseling also virtually like this, with people who are struggling. Presently, we are dealing with 3 missionary children, high schoolers. Okay. So to think, okay, it doesn't happen in Christian families, godly families, whatever. There's just way too many stories, that are out there and young people who are struggling. So
Yeah, if I could, to say they're a good Christian family, they love their kids, and their kids would never think of that is, such a dangerous position to
Yeah.
take.
yes.
And I get because you think through the repercussions of, well, if one of their kids has had those thoughts, then maybe they're not as good as they say they are as a family, and you start all those trickling down. But I can say firsthand, because I have a wonderful Christian family, that as a teenager, I had these thoughts. I know personally, I can say firsthand, and not for a right reason, and not that, to say it wasn't serious thoughts, like, did I even come close to even trying to attempt it? Probably not. But the thoughts were there. With a good family, with a good being in church, being in a Christian school, and, loving environment. And yet, if that's possible for me, who had that,
Right.
I don't even want to start thinking of those that don't have those, that support group, and or even it's to the place where they've given it more thought, or it's more serious to them than it was for me. Like, it's
Yeah.
so easy to cross into that boundary.
And there's so
So
And
we don't want to ever be the reason of saying, well, it's not necessary. It's not real. It's real.
yeah. Well, and I think that also we think of it kind of um in a mono way. We kind of think of it as like a singular, like this is a person, whatever. But there are all kinds of categories or reasons
Yeah.
that bring a person, to that point. And our seminar is 2 half days. So it's, usually in the morning till noon, and we cover 6 sessions. But in those sessions, we cover from a biblical perspective, multiple reasons that are the main reasons, why a young person would come to this point. And I think it's extremely important. So, there are. Let me just give you some of the things that we do. Okay, we talk
yeah, I
about.
was gonna say, if you could, Toby, maybe couch this in. All right, you convinced a couple of our listeners. We'll go where how we contact you later. But let's say they've contacted you and they have had the discussion with you, and they are a high school. They include a a 7th through 12th grade, and you are going to come to their school. What does that look like? What are you going to do? Give us a nutshell of what that looks like for that school.
So the details are worked out ahead of time. which is a specific form that they fill out. So we kind of understand what we're doing when we're going in, and there's a strict schedule. There is when we come in, we customize. I don't know if you can see this or not, but
Okay.
this
Mhm.
is there's a booklet that is customized for each school. That's Ohio Valley Christian School that we did. So in the outline there, or in the booklet, it is very specific schedule where we deal with where we go through sessions. Some of them are one of them is a split session, but we deal with, well, let me read you the titles, some of the titles. Um, so session 1, why am I here? What is my purpose? Session 2, who am I? Do I even matter?
Mm.
We have a split session, session 4, unresolved issues and demons within. Okay, and that specifically deals with lies that are meditated on, unresolved issues. Session 5, when I'm afraid, dealing with fear and dealing with the anxiety portion. But basically, in those sessions, deal with these things: guilt, neglect, abuse, fear, God's love, His presence, His promises, understanding God's design of your body. That's huge among young people, hating the person that they are. And by the way, guilt is a huge factor also of something in their past that they haven't brought to light, that they haven't dealt with. In our daughter's case, it was her the fact that she was raped, and just working the PTSD of that, the shame of that, what part of that was my part, which victims often feel. So we're able to deal with some of these things and encourage young people. The thing that is bringing them to a position of feeling like they're in a corner, there's no way out. This is an impossible situation. My life will never change. Being able to deal with that biblically and showing them kind of a way out. The With body design, for instance, God designed the beauty of variety and God's choice, talking about the acceptance of God's good sovereignty in your life, contentment in things that you cannot change. So, I mean, for me, that's a great portfolio that deals with so many issues among young people and so being a young pastor or being a youth pastor for 10 years, I connected to high schoolers really well. And Amy is presently a Christian school teacher and has a great, kind of conversation with young people. And it just connects. The story of Abigail, we bring her into, a lot of the sessions of this is how she was thinking. Here's a portion from her journal, for instance. Let me read you what she was thinking and all that. And somehow it just really connects.
Mm. So one of the things that was really attractive to us as well was there was follow-up that was offered to the students. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. So we offer virtual counseling, and so we call it triage counseling because our intention is if there's a young person who maybe we can deal with things in 5 virtual sessions, that's great. And some of these things are like that. But then it's our desire to connect, if we feel like a longer time is needed, with a clinical counselor with a biblical worldview, and they do exist. Okay, so we don't deny the medical piece of things. We don't deny that there may be needed help that way, especially in the moment of crisis. But so yeah, we provide follow up as necessary. Yeah.
Mm. And during the actual events, so the seminar, are there breakout times? Do some of those schools ask for
Yes.
breakout times and others not?
No, it's built in. It's built in. So
Okay.
we will get feedback. So the last session of the first day is a breakout session, and not breakout in the way of like you might think of. We separate the guys and the girls. I take the guys. Amy takes the girls, and we have a several questions specifically that we ask in those breakout sessions. Some of them are like this. Why do you think your generation has struggled the greatest with mental struggles? Okay.
Mm.
Um, what is a thought that has stuck out to you in the first 2 sessions? Um, do you think that social media, doom scrolling, which I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that, doom scrolling, et cetera, play a part in mental darkness? If so, how? Okay. What mental subjects do you think that teens struggle with the most? And this is an interesting one. We get a lot of feedback with this. Why won't teens speak to parents or adults when they are struggling, and how can we begin to change that on the adult and the teen side?
Mhm.
You know, so we've gotten so much um, education from young people who are just sharing themselves. And we were there with Kent Ramler, and
Mm-hmm.
he was
Mhm.
he went to this breakout session, and he was thinking, oh, these guys are not going to talk, they're not going to be whatever. But when we got rolling, it was exactly the opposite. Like, from many different guys, we're just alone, and I I kind of, promote it as, hey, what's said here stays here, and like the good old boys group kind of thing, and we're here to help each other, and team, whatever. And then they just start talking, and it's great. One young man expressed about his great fear of how do they expect me to handle college? How does life expect me to go out in a career after that? And he was talking about his crashing from these thoughts that is before him.
Mm.
So many open doors there, so much vulnerability, ability, transparency.
Yeah, I remember when Pastor Ramler made that comment about expecting crickets, and just the conversations were deep and good and well thought out. And again, going back to any reservations that we as school leaders might have, if we think, well, my kids won't participate or won't jump in, like, give them the opportunity
Yeah.
because they just might surprise you.
Absolutely. Give them the opportunity. The surprises so often, right? In ways we don't want them to, in ways they will.
Yeah.
Also in ways that we might, at the very least, let's say the school has done an outstanding job in being proactive in their discussions of mental health, suicide, depression, so on and so forth, sex education, whatever else we would say were taboo or need to be talked about. Let's say that they've done a great job. How many of our students, the moment they hear it from somebody else, the light goes on, even though they've heard it from us 2 billion times, right?
Yes.
Uh, I've been telling my students they should think about the military as an option for their future career. But then some rando in a uniform comes in and like spouts the same exact facts that I was spouting. And they're like, oh, yeah, maybe I should consider the Coast Guard. Maybe I should consider the Marines. That's a good idea. Yeah, I've been telling you that for a long time, bucko. So,
Yeah.
in the same way, perhaps, and for a far more meaningful, far more um, dangerous topic, why not get the extra set of hands in there that can be trusted? And I think that's a huge deal, Toby, as you presenting yourself as that pastor, and being so gracious. Thank you so much. And of course, we are forever sorry for your loss, and but being one so who is from us, amongst us, has skin in the game with a wife still working in this Christian school realm and whatnot, being able to trust and to then lean on those around, like the Pastor Rambler, and like those who evidenced that Safe Helps Groups was a wonderful opportunity for their school. Um, that's exciting, and we need more of you in more situations and more of these disciplines. So do me a favor before you kind of wrap it up for us, or I should say, wrap it up for us and tell us what final things you would want us to know about Safe Helps Group. But then make sure you tell us how it is and where it is that our school leaders can contact you, and then we'll make sure we include that in the show notes as well.
Yeah. So I would say a couple of things that understanding hesitancy, understanding, questioning, understanding, this is a big deal and whatever. I would say we will do you no harm. Okay.
Mm,
So the messages that we bring are not outlandish. They're not gory. They're not going to be something that you're going to be ashamed of or that are biblically unsound. I've been an expository preacher all of my ministry. My for good or for bad, my bachelor's and my master's degree are from Bob Jones University, whatever you think about that. But, it's not going to be some crazy foreign thing that is going to cause you harm afterward. It's going to generate conversations. I mean, the teachers, counselors, whatever, administrators, probably are going to have some conversations with kids, young people. So, it's a very straightforward, kind of a thing. We customize it according to what the school wants. We do 2 half days. And yeah, I'm not sure what else to tell you. You can contact us. Safehelps.org is our website. We own .com and .org. So just remember, safe is singular, helps is plural, and group is singular. Okay. So
Safe
safehelps.org.
Helps Group.
You can call me directly, 302-388-1766. I have
There we go.
a detailed packet or page that I will send you at first that you can see what it entails. We provide some merch, the customized beautiful book. There's a picture of our daughter on the back. That was only 2 weeks before she took her life. We also give out these wristbands for a couple of reasons. A lot of young people want to remember what they heard, and they also, want to maybe connect us in the future. Our information is on there. And so we do some things like that. We make it fun. There's a lot of comedy that, I'm a guy who likes humor. And so it's not all heavy, 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 heavy. And I think a lot of administrators, principals are very happy about that it's not like these kids are not going to be in shock, and it's not like that. And there are serious times, and sometimes there's tears, but there's a lot of laughing. I do icebreakers at the beginning of each session, that kind of stuff. The last session is really good, and it's a Q&A. So basically, the teens they have cards that they anonymously bring questions or write questions, and they put them in a box the first and the second day, and then someone from the school, the administrator, whoever's going to be Geraldo Rivera to interview us, they look through those questions. In fact, we tell the administrator we will take almost any question, and so some of them are real hard, some of them are real specific, but then Amy and I answer the questions. So the principal asks us, and it's kind of like a talk show kind of whatever, and we answer their questions. So
awesome.
Wow.
Now, and you said you were just in Georgia, you're heading to Virginia. I mean, we've got a friend out in Maui. Are you able to travel as far as
I
that
will
to do this?
sacrifice for the Lord. So you had mentioned, ask real quick, about Max schools, that we have coming up. I think these are Max schools. Faith Baptist Academy in Glen Burnie. They are, or Calvary. Excuse me, Calvary.
Yeah.
Calvary Baptist in Glen Burnie. Okay.
And then Faith Baptist School in Salisbury. Is that a
That's
Max?
me. That's me.
Oh,
that's
that's
you.
Matt. There you
Yeah,
go.
of course that's you. And we did Frederick Christian Academy, and I don't know if Chestertown Christian Academy is a Max school.
Yep.
Yes, so we've been
Sure
there
are.
too.
All right, making the rounds. That's awesome. Speaking of these schools and administrators with no faces like Matt, we're gonna move into our Christian administrator spotlight. Toby, you can just come along for the ride with this. We've been talking about a lot of Minnesota Association of Christian School member school administrators. We're gonna take a trip across the country out to Corona, California. Actually, excuse me, not Corona, California, Campbell, California. We'll hit Corona another time. We're gonna hit Campbell, California, and Christina Aronin. Now, these come to us via the loosely held California Christian School Association that we've spoken of before, and we're going to start sending out these $5 gift cards to a whole lot of different Christian school administrators in California, from Campbell to Livermore to San Jose to Sunnyvale to Los Gatos, Los Altos, and San Bruno, a lot more. But Matt, could you take a moment out and pray for Christina Aronin? She is the principal of Campbell Christian Schools out there in Campbell, California.
Yeah, let's pray. Father, thank you so much for Christina and her desire to lead these students for you. And I know, Lord, that there are students and perhaps even faculty that need the truth as Toby is sharing, of finding their hope and their security in you. I pray that Christina would find the tools that would allow her and her staff to be supportive, to shine the light, and that she herself would be encouraged and anchored in your word. I pray, Lord, that you would just bless them as they prepare for the start of this new school year. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Toby. It was a wonderful conversation, a great episode that I know our listeners are going to soak up.
Absolutely.
Thank you both for the opportunity.
Toby, we're excited. Everybody else, thanks for growing with us today.
Before you go, please be sure to hit that follow button on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Also, on Spotify, be sure to tap the star icon near the top and select the number of stars you'd like to give us. We'd be so grateful for 5. On Apple Podcasts, scroll down to the ratings and review section and then tap write a review to share your thoughts of the podcast. Thank you.